So the following question is, do you think it is possible for counselors to remain neutral in regard to their clients' values? I absolutely do believe that it is possible for counselors to remain neutral in regard to their clients' values. And I wrote down some bullet points stating reasons why I do think it's possible to remain neutrality as far as it goes with your clients' values. Number one, as a counselor, your role is to not judge or provide advice, but to guide the client in discovering their path and achieving their personal goals. So I think it's the counselor's job to remain neutral and listen to their clients' values, but not to instill your own personal values onto the client. The second bullet point I wrote is your values should not be the focus. Again, going back to my initial statement, your personal values really shouldn't be like a big part of the counseling session. There should be an inherent focus on the client and dilemmas they're trying to resolve, and your personal values should not be the focal points of the counseling session. Third bullet point, counseling is centered on working within the client's value system and supporting them and aligning their actions with those values. So essentially, it's important to listen to your client and understand their values and their point of view and their perspective, and again, have the focus centered around their value system and their beliefs, and to remain neutral within a counseling session. The fourth bullet point that I wanted to mention is there may be clients who seek guidance from their counselors, and a counselor can and will remain neutral about their clients' values when lending guidance. So that being said, what I'm getting to here is the counselor's job is to lend guidance. But again, they need to remain neutral about their personal values. The following statement I have made pertaining to neutrality in a counseling session is a counselor should remain ethical and consider that there is a differentiation in power. So essentially, there can be a power construct where the client may feel inferior or less powerful than the client, than the counselor. I differ in that. I think it should be an equal and neutral space. However, with that, counselors should hold themselves to a standard of respecting their clients' different values and belief system. Following bullet point, I've written, if values are communicated, it needs to be expressed from a neutral and a professional standpoint. Religious or political views should not be expressed, or any form of judgment or bias should not exist within a counseling session. That kind of rolls back to personal values. Again, I believe a counselor can remain neutral in a counseling session, and also not speak of personal things like religious matters or political beliefs. If the client wants to speak about that, obviously that's appropriate in a session. But I believe that a counselor should and has the ability to remain neutral in regards to political and religious beliefs. My next bullet point is a competent professional will ask themselves whether sharing such information will influence a client or cause harm to the relationship within a counseling session, and also explore any consequences of disclosure or anything that they say. So essentially, you need to be, as a counselor, very mindful of your words and create that neutral and professional landscape for the clients to express themselves and not feel any bias or discrimination against their personal views and values. The final bullet point and statement I have written is a counselor must also ask whether sharing personal values will demonstrate respect towards a client's values culturally and or background, or whether it will be an issue and create discomfort and distrust. So essentially, I'm saying a counselor has to ask themselves if it's really professional or appropriate for them to share their personal values. I think initially, at the beginning of that therapeutic relationship, it's important for a counselor to disclose, their base values, but again, to create that neutral and professional setting where, how do I say this, so that a client does not feel like pressured or influenced by a counselor's personal values, because again, the counselor needs to respect and acknowledge their client's values, but at the same time not instill their own personal values upon the client. And I think that's really important to create that non-judgmental, bias-free, neutral environment, so that a client can feel comfortable and not externally pressured by essentially the values or belief system of the counselor. So circling back to the initial question and what I think it is possible for counselors to remain neutral in regard to their clients' values.